Antonio, Texas. More tourists visit this city than any other in the Lone Star State, thanks to its mild weather, family friendly museums, and cafe lined riverwalk. But there's one attraction in town that, despite its popularity, was never designed to draw in the crowds.
It's about 3 acres of land. It has these limestone walls about 3 feet thick. And it's really a marvel of architecture and a place that has enormous historical significance.
This is the Alamo. Built as a Franciscan mission, the structure is now remembered as a fort that survived a famous 1836 siege. But as author Andrew Carroll knows, this beloved historic site would look very different were it not for an unlikely heroine.
You had what became known as the Second Battle for the Alamo.
San Antonio, 1905. 44-year-old schoolteacher Adina de Zavala has just been appointed as a custodian of the legendary Alamo. For her, the compound holds a deep significance.
Adina is the daughter of the first vice president of the Republic of Texas. So she had a real passion for saving Texas history.
As a caretaker of the hallowed site, Adina has her work cut out for her.
This beautiful building had fallen into total disrepair. There was graffiti, it had been vandalized, and people had been chipping away at the statues.
But for the school teacher, the site deserves to be lovingly preserved. In particular, a critical part of the building known as the Long Barracks.
The Long Barracks, where many of the defenders had died, but it was also one of the oldest parts of the whole compound. And so she envisioned that it would become a museum or a library that would teach people about the history of the battle and the Alamo itself.
But there's a problem. Adina's authority as caretaker is shared with another woman, 22-year-old ranching heiress Clara Driscoll. And Clara's vision for the Alamo's preservation is very different.
To Clara, the Long Barracks were an eyesore, and she wanted to see them knocked down so they could put up hotels and other tourist attractions.
Adina is outraged by Clara's disregard for the history of the Alamo and vows to protect the Long Barracks at all cost. And over the next 3 years, the custodians squabble in court over how to best preserve the building, leaving the fate of the Alamo in limbo. But then, in 1908, Adina receives some disturbing news. Clara has disregarded the courts and gone behind her back.
Adina hears that Clara is going to rent out the Long Barracks to a group of vaudeville performers.
Adina knows that possession is 9/10 of the law. She fears that once Clara and her performers occupy the barracks, her rival will be just one step away from razing them to the ground. Desperate to secure the fate of the priceless relic, Adina takes drastic action.
She hires armed guards to stand outside the Long Barracks to prevent the new tenants from coming in.
The San Antonio sheriff quickly catches wind of her plan. Though no court has declared Clara the rightful custodian, he sides with the young heiress and orders Adina's guards off the Alamo grounds. But Adina isn't giving up that easily.
And this is when the real standoff begins.
It's February 1908, San Antonio, Texas. Alamo caretaker Adina de Zavala reveres the compound as sacred ground. So when she hears that her fellow caretaker and rival, Clara Driscoll, is scheming to destroy part of the site, she decides to make her own last stand. As the sheriff ushers her hired guards off the Alamo grounds, Adina springs into action.
She slams the door, locks it, and barricades herself inside.
The middle-aged schoolteacher has decided to try and hold the fort on her own.
She declares that unless the building's preservation is assured, she will not leave.
Adina was ready for a long siege if that's what it would come to.
The sheriff could send in his men to drag her out, but with a curious crowd gathering, he opts for a different tactic to ferret out his agitator.
He cuts off the electricity and he refuses anyone from going in or out of the building to bring her food or water or any kind of supplies.
Adina spends a frigid night inside the dark, rat-infested barracks. By morning, it's clear the sheriff believes the holdout is about to end. But Adina stands firm. And soon, she won't be alone in her battle. Word of the standoff reaches the press, and her mission soon gains the support of the Texan public. They too are proud of their heritage and share in Adina's passion to preserve their history.
They describe her sort of this Joan of Arc, willing to literally give up her life for a greater cause. And because of all this attention, the public comes around to her side and demands that the Long Barracks be saved.
3 days into the siege, with public pressure mounting, the governor of Texas intervenes. He announces that plans to demolish the Alamo Barracks are postponed indefinitely. A hungry, exhausted Adina de Zavala finally emerges and comes to be known as the Angel of the Alamo. Today, the Alamo is the state's most popular historic landmark and one of the country's top tourist destinations. And the story of its second great standoff is a reminder of the fierce pride and steely courage that made Texas great.